While it may seem startling, finding water in a grave is not very uncommon. Depending on the location and the water table around the cemetery, water is commonly found in graves due to the released pressure on the saturated soil surrounding the grave. This is one of the primary uses for burial vaults, to keep the water away from the casket. When there is enough water in the grave will be pumped out, either before setting the burial vault or while the burial vault is being lowered. Personally, I prefer to wait until it's time to lower the vault to pump the water. The pressure from the water in the grave can keep the grave walls intact, preventing a collapse on one side of the grave. After fixing a small hydraulic leak, we can go ahead and set this lined and sealed Trigard Estate over the grave for today's service. For any families who have a concern about a casket being saturated with water, a lined and sealed burial vault, such as this Trigard Estate, is a high-quality option to keep the casket safe. While it does not stop the natural decomposition process, it does prevent the casket from sitting in waterlogged areas after heavy rains or in cemeteries with a high water table. Grave liners or a burial vault are required by most cemeteries, but their reasoning is not to protect the casket, it's for the preservation of the grave itself. If you've ever been in an old section of the cemetery and the ground appears to be wave-like, it's because burial vaults were not used. As the casket deteriorates, the ground will settle above the vault or the grave liner, creating that dip in the earth. This is why most cemeteries require a burial vault of some kind. The upkeep and maintenance to keep the cemetery level for the grounds crew would be costly and required constant attention. But now that this vault is set, we can move on to the vault swinging process. It's now time to swing the burial vault. Swinging the vault is a term used by vaultmen that simply refers to setting the vault over the grave, suspending the base, and separating the lid from the base. This allows the vault to be visible above ground and also allows the sealing process to take place above ground. And I'm excited today because I've got a brand new set of equipment. And by brand new, what I really mean is I had a day in the shop to refurbish my feet. The feet are a piece of equipment that reels the cables on each end of the vault, allowing the vault to be raised and lowered. And being able to sand down and completely buff these feet to a brand new shine is something I think every vaultman should know how to do. And I have made a video in the past of my process of refurbishing this equipment, and I'll put a link in the description below. It's important to have equipment that functions well, but if it looks beat up and dingy, it may give the appearance to family and funeral directors that it doesn't work properly. So it's important that we take our time to maintain our equipment and keep it looking presentable. To display this burial vault, we first reel the cables on each end 8 times, making sure both sets of cables are evenly reeled. We can then separate the feet away from the vault around 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch. This makes sure that the equipment we'll be adding next align properly. This is a one-man job at our company, so this one-man bar comes in handy. It attaches both sets of feet together, allowing one man to raise and lower the vault from one end of both sets of feet. We raise the vault off of the 2 aluminum boards that are supporting its weight. If one side of the vault raises up too high, we can simply release some slack out of the cables, and if it's too off, we can set the vault back down and adjust our cables to make sure it's level. We can then add our lid rail and lid carrier. The lid rail and lid carrier allow us to separate the base from the lid and push the lid back on rails. At some vault companies, the bottom of the vault is set down into the grave, and the lid is kept off to the side and sealed after the family has left. To me, I believe the family should be able to see the entire sealing and lowering process. Displaying the vault in this manner allows me to seal and lower the burial vault without using any extra equipment. Once we know the lid carriers line up perfectly over the lid rails, it can be pushed back on the wheels, and our buggy boards can be removed. These boards prevent the vault from sealing on the way to the cemetery. Our vaults are produced with the seals already installed before the concrete is even poured. We use a high-strength adhesive to place the seal into the liner, and then after the vaults have been poured, we use corner supports to make sure The burial vault base does not come in contact with the seal that's housed in the groove of the lid. And people of all ages will be present at the cemetery today, so I'm going to take some measures to make sure that no one has any slips or falls, just like I just about did. Our main concern as a vault man is to try to shield the family from the elements and create a safe structure for the family to hold their committal service. This is the Frigid Imperial lowering device, the only lowering device that our company uses, and I think it's the best available device for lowering the casket into the vault. With this device, the family simply has to set the casket on that first large roller. It will then guide itself along the guide bars, over the rollers, and to the other end of the device without the family having to straddle both sides of the burial vault, making it much safer than some other devices. Our final step is the T-carpets that just cover up some of our equipment. The manual labor is done, and it's now time to focus on the little details of a committal service setup. This man was a U.S. Army veteran, so we display the American flag and the Army flag, as well as add chair covers with a patriotic design. Some people have criticized that the American flag should not be sat on, but these chair covers are a patriotic symbol. There are not 13 stripes, and there are not 50 stars. Therefore, it does not go against the flag code. My carpets will get covered in snow as soon as the family arrives, but until they arrive, my OCD tells me to go ahead and sweep off the carpets and make sure I sweep off any of the dirt as well. Now, since I almost took a spill during the setup process, I decided to shovel out as much snow as I could and place another green carpet down to try to give the family some more traction when entering the tent. This Trigard Estate will receive a trademark on the foot end of the vault, a nameplate on the foot end of the vault, and an Army emblem at the head end of the vault. On every service, we do our best to set a high-quality committal service, but we try to pay even more attention when a member of the armed services has passed away. It's the least we can do for someone who served this great country. One of the last steps to a service is to set out complimentary tissues for the family members. And oftentimes the funeral home will request that we provide heat, so we run propane heaters under the tent and fully enclose the tent. And with the tissues placed, the carpets swept, and all the nameplates and emblems being applied to the vault, this Trigard Estate is set and ready for the family to arrive. Our main goal on a day like today is blocking the wind. Attending a funeral is hard enough. We want to do everything we can to make this process more comfortable for the family and show as much respect possible to a veteran who has served this nation.
Hey!
The 21-gun salute has been fired and the taps have played. This service has come to its conclusion. It's now time for the funeral director and I to lower the burial vault into its final resting place. Once we've completed that task, the cables may be removed from underneath the vault by pulling them from one end. The tent can be torn down, our equipment put back in the truck, in preparation of the cemetery crew arriving to backfill the grave. On any committal service, the family is entitled to watch the sealing and lowering process, and I am more than honored to perform that service in front of them. But once the preacher has said his message, many families move on to the luncheon or repast after the service. At that point, the funeral director and I lower the vault, and I begin my teardown process. This cemetery begins the backfilling process using pea gravel. The reasoning for this is that the pea gravel can help with drainage and also settling. This gravel is moved down the sides of the vault and to the ends of the vault. The small circular pieces of gravel work better when it comes to filling in the small spaces, filling places that the soil would end up settling into, causing the grave to have low spots. After the pea gravel has been leveled out around the sides of the vault, backfilled dirt is brought in on a dump trailer and the ground is leveled out, leaving a small amount of excess dirt for settling. In a few weeks' time, the cemetery crew will come back to top dress this grave. God bless this man's service to our country.